Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Sociology Analytica. This is Pooja Prasanna, your sociology faculty. So today is the last Thinkers Day, that is GH Mead. So in this, I'll be discussing under GH Mead. I'll be discussing two questions. Okay, and as you've seen this question is again I'm bringing some other thinker and I'm asking you to analyze from GH Mead context. Okay, the question is actually very simple. The question is, what is social action? What is social action? How is Mead's conception of social action is different from Weber's context? Okay, Weber's understanding of social action. See, this is pretty much simple because you all must be knowing that in fact, Weber is the father of interpretative social action, interpretative school of thought. He is the first person to even start understanding sociology from a social action perspective. And subsequently, whosoever came, that is most of the symbolic interactionists, ethnomethodologists, phenomenologists. So more or less, everyone actually belongs to social action theories approach itself. Understand? So it's not that difficult to find out what or even to jot down what they're asking in this particular question, because Weber is a father of or the initial person to study from social action theory, and subsequently whosoever has given, they have also done from the social action theory itself. So anyway, what you can do is you can actually talk about the social action theory first, that is how they actually understood society, that is how social action theorists understood society, and then you can go on to give what is a definition, or you can do vice versa also. Initially only you can give a definition of what is social action, and then you can go on to explain how sociologists study from social action theory per se. Okay, like this you can do anyhow you can do, but what I have done is I've started with how sociologists study from social action per se, what is it, how they study, and then I've went on to explain what is social action. Okay, so sociologists, what is the social action perspective? So basically they reject the view that society has a clear structure that directs individual to behave in a certain way. So basically they are rejecting structuralist. Okay, so the sociological studies divided into two. One is structural per se, and the one is social action. That is, some people like Durkheim, August Comte, we have seen in the subsequent other chapters. So they believe in structure per se, that is they study society from structural aspect, whereas some sociologists, they deny that no, we should not study from structure. How we should actually study? We should study from the social action. Okay, why is that? Because they believe that, see, what they believe is that every individual is not blindly accepting. Every individual is not a passive individual. In fact, man is an active man, okay, or an active individual. So, or an active personality. What he'll be doing? So he will come across with a particular action. So he will not just blindly accept it. He will react back. He'll understand. He'll give his own meaning. Then he will react back. Okay, so it's an action reaction. So meanings keeps on changing from one aspect to that of the other aspect. So most of the structural, whosoever studies from structure aspect, they believe that man is a passive man. But whosoever studies from social action per se, they believe that man is not a passive man. So then I'm explaining what is social action, that is social action theorists believe. See, some deny that existence of social structure altogether. Okay, some completely deny altogether, but then they argue that even if it is there, the structure is rising out of actions of individual. Even if structure is there, whatever the structure, existing structure is there, why it is there? It is actually a byproduct of man himself. So for example, Weber believes this. Okay, Weber actually believes that Weber doesn't deny structure. Weber says structure is present, but then whatever it is present, so it is a byproduct of man. Same goes with Mead also. Mead also agrees to this part. Already some pre-existing structure will be there, but whatever the social action, so it is based on the pre-existing structure as well as the man's meaning, whatever the man's understanding or man's interpretation. Okay, so I've just explained. You can explain in few statements like this. You can go on to further explain also based on how much space is left. But the thing is, this should be the crux. This should be the crux. That is, what is social action theory? How they actually study, and then you can simply define what is social action. What is social action? It's an act which takes into account of action and reaction of an individual. That is, man is not simply a passive. Man is an active being. Man is an active being. So he will. For every action or every reaction, he'll try to give his own meaning, he'll try to interpret it in his own way, and then he'll be reacting back. Okay, so after writing this, what I'm going to do is, I'm going to go to the next part. The next part is how is Mead's conception of social action is different from Weber's. Okay, so I'm going to start with Weber. Okay, why? Because Weber, he himself is the first person to start from social action per se in sociology. So I'm going to start from Weber's idea. See what Weber say. Weber emphasizes on what? Understanding the meaning, whatever it is attached by the human being. Okay, so Weber says that we need to develop empathetic understanding. Okay, empathetic understanding to uncover the personal meanings and motives of individual which they give to their action. Okay, so every human being will be giving meanings, and there will be certain motives behind every action. And as a sociologist, what we need to do, we need to decipher what is the meaning and motive of that particular social action. So this is what he says. And why he says that? He says that in order to understand the social structure at large, whatever the social structure, like capitalistic society, whatever the economic system, whatever the class structure, religion, be it any social structure whichever is present in the society, in order to understand that, what we also need to understand, we need to decipher the meanings. We need to decipher the meanings and motives behind every social action. If we understand this, then it helps in understanding how social structure keeps on changing over the time, how economic system changes over the time, how family changes over the time, how religion changes over the time. So in order to understand this, we need to understand the meanings and motives of the personal individual social action. And next what he says, see, though he is talking about understanding individuals' meanings and motives, but then he's not going at a he's not going like a phenomenologist. What phenomenologists say, that every action, every meaning, everyone's interpretation is different, so we cannot generalize at all. But then Weber says that yes, see, we can understand the meanings and motives of social action. After understanding of meaning and motive of social action, we can go for generalization. Okay, in fact, Weber actually goes for generalization of social action. Did you understand this? Generalization of social action. Then what I've done is I've given a small definition which is given by Weber himself. How does Weber define social action? That is meaningful act oriented towards the other individual. What is social action? It's a meaningful act. Okay, so that means as an individual, you are attaching a meaning towards your action, and it is not happening in isolation. Okay, according to Weber, a social action never happens in isolation. For a social action to happen, it is most important, it has to happen within the society. That is, it has to happen between the two individuals. Okay, and this action will always contain what? It will always contain certain meanings and motives. This is what Weber says. Okay, so what he says, what exists in reality is an ongoing chain of reciprocal social action. You do something on the basis of your culture, on the basis of your meaning, on the basis of your motive, and the person who is in front of you, he'll also be doing on the basis of his culture, his political views, his religious views, his history, and then his motives, and as well as whatever the meaning he is attaching to that. So it's action is nothing but social action is nothing but an ongoing chain of reciprocal actions. Did you understand this? See, what many students would do is they go on to talk about the ideal type of social action. This word rational, Zweck rational, etc., etc. Traditional social action, charismatic, all that, See, in this particular point, in this particular question, it is not at all required. Why? Because I'm not asking about the whole thing about Weber social action. I'm not. What I'm asking is, how did Weber study social action and how Mead has studied social action? This is all I'm asking. So you have to just give the summary of how Weber has studied social action. Don't go on to write Zweck rational, word rational, social, all that you don't have to write. Okay. Next, moving on to Mead. How Mead has studied. So Mead has also studied on a similar line. Okay, he also emphasized on what? Role of the active individual than Weber. I mean, he has put, in fact, more emphasis. Okay, that he is telling that on every action, whatever it keeps on happening. So man is not just passive. Man is not passive. Man is actively calculating what is right, what is wrong for you, what is what he has to do, how he has to behave, etc., etc. So in each and every phase of his life. Okay, if you remember, Mead talks about game stage, play stage, all these stages he says. So he also talks about how socialization keeps on changing, and how because of this socialization, how social action also keeps on changing. You must have read all those things. So actually all these things you don't have to write. You can but summarize and write it. What he says, he emphasizes the role of active individual. Man is active. Okay, and the stress, he's stressing more than what the Weber has stressed. Okay, next, what he believes that, see, though man is an active personality, but he always is, there's a some amount of constraint. Why some amount of constraint is there? See, what is telling that for an individual to be there, individual is already there in a pre-existing society. If an individual is born, an individual is born into a pre-existing society. So pre-existing society will have certain social roles. That is, if you're a student, you're supposed to behave in a certain manner only. Okay, so what is telling that a society will always have a certain set of pre-existing social roles, and which every people have to take in order to get by the society. That means everyone has to everyone has to take up this social role in order to survive in the society. Okay, so this is one of the pre-existing condition. But what Mead is telling is that individual has considerable freedom to shape the identity and between these social role. So the way structuralists say that man passively abide by the social role, he's telling that man doesn't passively abide by the social role. So whenever he'll be taking up a social action, so what he will have? He will have certain amount of freedom. He will have certain amount of freedom to choose what he want to, how he want to act. Did you understand? So what he says, man keeps on reinterpreting. Okay, man keeps on interpreting and reinterpreting the social action. So it's a constant process. According to me, social action is a constant process. It keeps on happening almost till the time man is there in the society. Okay, and your social action, he also further tells, your social action also depends on two other aspects. What is that? Significant others and generalized others. Okay, who are significant others? That is your close ones. Your close ones, where that is your primary socialization people. So these are your extremely close people are significant others. Then generalized others is society at large. Okay, whichever society you belong to, society at large is your generalized others. So what Mead is telling is that, see, man's social action keeps on wobbling between significant others and generalized others. He will be meeting both significant others as well as generalized others, and based on that, so he will decide which social action he has to take, because every time he meets any of these two, so he'll be interpreting and reinterpreting. So because of this, his social action also changes. So what Mead is trying to tell, that man is active individual. Okay, so just one second. Okay, so Mead says man is an active individual. This is important point. But then there is also pre-existing social role. This is very important point. And then how man is having freedom to shape his identity. Whenever he has to perform a social action, he has freedom to do that particular role. It's not very constrained. It's not a passive man. And then what he'll do, whenever there's a social action, there will be a constant interpretation and reinterpretation. And so and this is also, okay, this is also depends on what? Significant others and then generalized others. Okay, did you understand? See, if still place is left, you can also talk about the play stage and game stage, what Mead talks about. But then this is, even if you don't add, that is totally fine. This point is totally fine even if you don't add. But then if still the place is left, you can actually add this particular point. Did you understand? So this actually is very simple. Okay, it's very simple. First, what is social action? And then Weber's conception of social action. Don't write too much about ideal type, this and that of social action. Don't write that. Just write a summary of what Weber thinks about it. And then moving on to Mead, and then write what is Mead's conception of social action. Okay, did you understand this? It's a pretty simple question. Tomorrow, I'll come up with one more question. That is, tomorrow I'm going to focus only on some concept of Mead. Okay. In case if you have any doubt, you can just drop your queries in the comment section. I'll see you all tomorrow with Mead. Thank you.